Hi folks, Slick Slices here. Now, there's another knife in my high-end series. I don't normally do unboxings, occasionally, but not often. But in this case, it's more of a debagging than an unboxing. But I'm just going to just show you this because it's really quite attractive. We've got a little tag here that says "Made in the USA." And that applies not just to the cover, but to the knife inside as well. This is, it's quite an attractive wrap. This knife is in. It's got the CMF logo, and this is the CMF Omega. And inside, it's got this nice sort of toweling as well. So it's a nice place to keep your knife if it's not in your pocket. Obviously not a knife for keeping, not a slip for keeping in your pocket. But I don't know whether this knife is ever likely to be carried because, of course, we're in the UK and it's a locking knife. So it probably won't ever get carried. But this is a really, really nice knife. It's a custom knife. The maker is Pickarski, who is an American knife maker of really quite some repute. These knives are expensive, they're difficult to get hold of, and on the aftermarket I believe they can fetch $2,500. Now the person that owns most of the knives in my high-end knife collection owns this as well, and he owns a few of these. Pickarski is one of his favourite designers. Now, in certain respects, this is just another titanium slab handled knife, frame lock, but it's really in the details that this knife comes alive. For a start, the pivot there is mother of pearl. Does that add anything to the knife other than just a bit of bling? No, but it looks bloody good. The construction puts the screws into the titanium, which, although it keeps things simple, it does run the risk of dethreading stripping the threads of the titanium handle if you are rough on a disassembly. Now, I'm not disassembled this knife, but there is a video of it being disassembled, and that's when you find some of the other nice things and awkward things about this knife. So if I turn it over with this Damascus milled clip with no screws, the screws come through from the inside. So again, they're screwed into the titanium. So again, there's a risk you could strip the threads if you tighten them too much. We've got these two screws here plus a pin, and they all support the floating, and I think it's Damascus again, although it's maybe zirconium, floating back spacer. So if you take this apart, you've got these two screws and four spacers, two spacers per screw, one on either side of the floating back spacer. So it does make it a little bit of a mare to reassemble, but it's not too bad. Other thing about it is these are T8s, and this is, I think, T15, which makes them quite robust screws. It could, of course, encourage over tightening, which is the downside. I think the cutout on this is for the lock bar is really nice and slim. It's a bit like the Rocksteads. It's not a great big gap that you might fall into. It's just a nice slim thing, and most of it disappears under the clip. I'm never a fan of having the relief cut on the outside. I'm sure there's a very good reason for it. There's probably a good mechanical reason for it, but I don't know. We have no insert. This is just titanium on steel. I presume it's carbonized, but I don't I don't know that for a fact. The little point there is actually it's the back of the detent ball. We have a concealed stop pin. You can't see it except that it's just on the back side. You can see where it is, but you can't remove it from the outside, and you can't see it because it's within a cutout in the tang of the blade. Now this one has thumb stud opening. Sometimes they can have a flipper tab, and there is a possibility that is flippable using that little bit there, but I certainly can't, and I don't know whether it is or isn't. But the thumb opening is, well, if you have any dexterity whatsoever, the thumb opening is very straightforward. It is extremely smooth in action. Now, certainly early versions had Teflon washers, which, you know, for a knife at this sort of level, it was a bit odd. They now have bearings, and I think, just by how smoothly this runs, it must have bearings. I mean, let's look at the smoothness of that. It's actually quite a heavy blade as well, because it's quite thick in the spine. Acid washed, all of it except the detent track, which looks like they've been sort of painted with nail varnish or something, and then had it removed. So it runs. It was one of the downsides to having an acid washed blade, is sometimes the detent ball kind of grates as it goes over the slightly uneven surface. But in this, the detent ball track is not acid washed. The rest of the blade is acid washed, and it's, for an acid washed blade, it's really smooth. It's a really I'm not a big fan of acid wash finishes, because they can leave your knife a bit gritty feeling, and if you cut things like fruit or anything with it, it just doesn't feel right when you're cutting. This is lovely and smooth. I haven't cut any fruit with it because it's not my knife, but I think it would cut fruit quite well. It's a little bit on the thick side, maybe for cutting apples. It might make them explode a little bit. You can't beat a case trapper there's an apple cutting knife. Now we've got these black. I think there's a coating. Is it a coating? Zirconium. Sorry, I think there's zirconium material, and you've got them on both sides. So in that sense, it's ambidextrous. The clip is clearly one side only, and even if it wasn't, this knife is clearly a right-hand only knife, because you've got what clutter there is, not that there's much, is on that side. One thing I think, if I was to suggest an improvement, and it's small, these screws, Ian Pickarski should have a look at Herman knives and see the way they do the screws. They do them in a similar way, but this end of the screw is polished and domed so that it forms a design feature rather than simply having to be there to make it work. The fact these are through holes rather than just blind holes is probably a good thing in my book, because if you do get things gummed up in them, they're easier to clean out. So it's not a big knife. What have I got to compare it with here? Well, this is a large Sebenza, because I just happen to have one lying out on the desk. This isn't mine. This is one you're going to see very soon, actually, in my high-end knife series. But you'll see it's slightly smaller than the large Sebenza. To be honest, I think looking at it in isolation, it looks even smaller. but it is just a little smaller than the large Sebenza. Almost as much cutting length in that blade, because you've got a bit more belly here. And of course, being a custom knife, you've got some design elements in the shaping of the blade, which are, I suppose, love them or loathe them. I actually think they look really good. He does various versions of this knife with, this is a relatively low model in his range. He does things like full tie Damascus handles and so forth. But no, I just overall I think this is a really nice knife. If I was right-handed and I was allowed to carry it, this is a sort of knife I might well find myself using. Mainly just because it looks nice. Is it the most ergonomic knife in the world? Maybe not. Is it the best cutting blade in the world? I don't know, maybe not. But it's one of the best looking knives in the world. And that in itself is enough to make it attractive in my book. And for me to want to think that this would be nice to carry. And of course it's got mother of pearl on it, and mother of pearl is my favourite thing. So if you like all this stuff, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more of these things, then please remember to subscribe, and remember to ring the bell if you want notifications. You may or may not get them, the way YouTube works these days, but they're there. So anyway, thank you to the person who lent me this knife. Thank you to all of you for watching. I will see you again next time. Bye.